What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and give you guys my price prediction for tomorrow based off what the charts are showing and based off what the data is suggesting. I'm also going to break down what's going on in the overall market, what's going on with Tesla and Elon Musk, and how these things may affect Tesla going forward as well. Now, before I break any of this down, before I get into any details, I got to mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. Not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any of these 12 free stocks could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer has been extended for another 2 weeks, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So looking at Tesla, this thing was down almost 8% for the day on Friday. We are starting to see this thing continuing to downtrend as this trend continues. Now, looking back over the last couple of days, the trend is very clear. This thing was in the 250s, then the 230s, then the 220s. Now we're all the way back down to 204. So now Tesla's in this state where we're trying to hold these support levels, and we're struggling to do that, and we're continuing to downtrend. Now, Tesla is very close to that key psychological level, which would be that $200 level, and I do believe we are going to test this very, very soon. What else is interesting is for the entire year, at least the year 2022, this is the lowest we've actually seen Tesla. So Tesla recently made that new low. That's obviously not the best of signs for a stock right before earnings are coming out. Now, right now, the markets are entering a very interesting state. Earnings are coming out very soon for this week. The earnings season is back. And right now, things are not looking the best, in my opinion, because we're starting to see big adjustments being made to expectations and also a lot of fear and panic about the recession that we are in. Now, the fear and greed index right now is very fearful. Investors are just panicking. There's lots of uncertainty about the future. There are lots of global tensions as well. And investors are just not in the best of states, and fear is driving this market. Now, we're starting to see another big issue, and that's the fact that OPEC is continuing to kind of decrease the supply of their production. And when this is happening, during a time like this, gas prices are starting to go up again. We're starting to see businesses be affected by this, and all of these things will have a negative effect on earnings for businesses, for consumer spending, which in turn is not going to be the best for earnings in the future. Now, this wasn't necessarily something that happened overnight. This has been a big issue over the last couple of months, and with that as well, not to mention the slowdown simultaneously in China, all those things are just not the best for earnings, in my opinion, and this will have a negative effect for many big corporations out there. Now, there's been a lot of talk about how US corporate earnings will increasingly signal recession risk. This is because of the fact that the recession, in my opinion, has actually been going on. I know that there's been this change in the definition of it by lots of investors, lots of analysts, which I just think is ridiculous. It's been defined as two consecutive negative GDP quarters. We already got that, and we've been defining it that way for the past few decades. It makes no sense to kind of change, the definition based off what your agenda is. So in that case, we are in a recession. I want to make that as clear as possible. And during these recessions, eventually the job market is likely going to be affected. We are starting to see lots of layoffs continuing. And when this happens, it may slow down the jobs market even more as time continues. So the Fed right now is in a state where they want to see more pain in the jobs market. We're not seeing as much pain as what they would prefer, which is why they are incentivized to be hawkish again. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get another 75 basis point hike this year. Now, when that happens, there has been some talk about the Fed being a little bit too aggressive. Other people say the opposite, but ultimately the Fed in turn wants more pain in this market, and we are going to see jobs get affected. Earnings for companies will be affected too with the slowdown in demand. And with the slowdown in demand, I do believe that earnings may not be the best this time around. Now, the interesting thing is the last time earnings came out, people were expecting the same thing. However, that's not what ended up happening, right? Earnings were actually a lot better than expected the last time they came out for Q2. So now we're entering the Q3 earnings, and things are actually in a very interesting state. So we have big companies such as, let me see, Bank of America, Charles Schwab, all coming out for Monday. This is going to be very important because before open, we are going to be affected on how we move from this, the market has a tendency of moving very collectively in this market. Tuesday, we have like Netflix, United, Pinnacle, and a bunch of other companies, followed by Wednesday being the big day for us. After close, we have Tesla's big earnings. We have IBM, we have Ally Bank, and we have the NASDAQ, a bunch of things all coming out at very similar times. Now, Tesla is a big dog in this market. Economists and many investors look at the state of our economy also based off how businesses are doing. And if Tesla is not doing well, hypothetically, it's going to be very concerning for investors. Now, the thing about that is the fact that Tesla is a very strong company, guys, fundamentally, but they can have those few amounts of earnings where their earnings per share, their margins are not as great because of what's going on with expenses in this market. So that's the reason why I'm very cautious right now. And there has been a lot of like talk about earnings per share starting to drop for a lot of these markets, which in turn could actually lead to not the best of reports coming forward. So if that's the case for Tesla, what else is concerning me would be how Tesla responds to this. What is Tesla going to do about their margins? Are they going to be increasing prices again? Are they going to, change how they end up improving their means of production? What about their like reserves that they're holding, the other currencies that they're holding around the world? What's going to happen to those? I want to see that in their earnings. Right now, guys, I'm still optimistic. I do believe Tesla will do well, but I'm not as confident in them actually meeting all the expectations when it comes to how profitable they are and things like that. Now, there are also lots of FUD articles coming out about Elon Musk, the whole Twitter fiasco, which is, in my opinion, a nightmare. And there's just so much FUD right now, guys. I mean, people are just panicking. There's some people that are just uncertain. People are fed up with this. And I completely understand that things like this are going on and they are having a negative effect on consumer sentiment. So for Tesla, what on earth is going on from a technical standpoint? Like I mentioned, we are down trending over and over again. We had these support zones. We're just breaking one, then another, then another, then another, and we're just continuing to come down over again. Now, what it looks like, in my opinion, is the chart is going to retest 200 very soon, and we're going to try to hold that. Can I guarantee we're going to hold that? The answer is not necessarily. Before we retest 200, though, we could get a small bounce depending on how earnings go, and then I do believe Tesla's likely going to come down. That's just my honest opinion. Now, if we are dropping this hard going into an earnings, there could be a surprise and Tesla does like a little bit better than expected, and we end up just getting a big bounce after that. But earnings is on Wednesday after the close, so until then, with all the uncertainty right now, it's going to depend heavily on how other banks report their earnings. If earnings are not as good as we anticipate, the market could continue to downtrend, and that in turn could bring Tesla down to these lower levels, like that 200 to 190 range, a very, very key range, which I do believe Tesla could be entering very soon. Now, from a macro perspective, if you look at Tesla on the daily, right now, all right, this candle does not look good, to be honest with everyone on the daily. We have this absolutely bearish engulfing candle right here. If you look at it, this thing basically opened around here. We came all the way down. Tesla just dropped so hard. And you could actually see there's almost no wick right here on the bottom. It's very hard to see it. And we closed very close to where our bottom was for this year. This is a sign that this is not going to be the final bottom. There's more downside to come. And also, the trend is still looking bearish as the EMAs are kind of like expanding. On the weekly, if you look at Tesla, same thing. The weekly candle does not look good whatsoever. It looks very bearish, at least for the short term. And looking at this from a MACD, RSI, and like your other things, same thing right here on the weekly. Big crossover, no sign of it kind of like slowing down. I like to look at on the daily when looking at the RSI. But anyways, MACD is still kind of open right here. It still looks like it has bearish momentum. RSI it's oversold, which is like a good sign for Tesla in a way where we do have some potential for a bounce, but we need confirmation of that first before we can actually call it. And there's no confirmation of us bouncing just yet. Momentum is still slowing down, so Tesla's not in the best of states, in my honest opinion, guys. It does look like more downside is imminent. So what am I anticipating for tomorrow? The answer is it depends on earnings. All right, it really depends on how earnings really go and how the market ends up respecting them. And it's also important to note that the market makers have a tendency of manipulating this market like crazy. So sometimes the most unexpected things could happen. What I'm thinking though is I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow Tesla gets this like nice bounce into open. We try to hold 206. And another thing about this market is it's very important to study what's going on. How is Tesla responding to support and resistance levels? Are we showing some strength? Are we pushing up hard? Or are we starting to come down a bit? I do believe Tesla could come back to this range, this 210 to 206 range like this, but then we're going to be hit by strong resistance. And I do think this thing is going to struggle a bit. I wouldn't be surprised if the market continues to come down, guys. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't necessarily think earnings are going to be that awesome. So it's very possible Tesla could actually come down to a new low again, whether it's today or tomorrow, and start to test 200. A break below 200 would be a little bit surprising, but it is very possible, guys. And Tesla could end up closing very close to 200 flats for today. Now, if Tesla does end up not necessarily testing 200 this quickly. Maybe it could take like a couple of days before we get there. If Tesla does start pushing up, hypothetically, there's one problem for it. The problem is now all these support levels are becoming resistance. So now if we try pushing up, okay, this like 210, 211 range is going to become resistance. This 206 range is resistance. It's going to be hard, a little bit more difficult for us to actually get a nice breakout since we have all this resistance. A break above those would cause us to push to about 215. That's another resistance level. And remember, just a couple of weeks ago, $215 was like way, way, way below where Tesla was. So you could see how much it really dropped and how difficult it could actually be to make a massive move from all these resistance levels. Now we'd have to break past like 220, then 226, then 230. That's pretty tricky in a market like this, guys. And that's the reason why I'm very cautious with how these fake outs may come out of nowhere. There could be like an instance where Tesla breaks up and breaks up. It looks like it's about to just start rallying to the upside. Then we get a big rejection off one of these resistance levels. Very possible, and that's why you have to watch it very carefully. Watch for manipulation, what else is going on. It's also important to note that sometimes the most unexpected things could happen in this market. I think a lot of people learned this on Thursday when after like the whole CPI report came out. That was like an absolutely crazy day. For Tesla, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing continues to downtrend. We continue to drop more and more. But then where we move on, I'd say like Thursday, depends on earnings. If Tesla reports strong earnings, they actually beat expectations, there's a good chance that this thing could actually reverse and make a nice move to the upside when people least expect it. Now, if earnings are just like okay, or if nothing like that spectacular is really announced, Tesla could just trade flats, maybe drop a little bit more. Overall, guys, from a macro perspective, the market is looking more bearish than bullish. If you look at the SPY, if you look at the NASDAQ, the SPY is continuing to make those new lows. It actually dropped to about 348 just a couple of days ago, got a big bounce off that, followed by a big rejection. In my opinion, it looks like it's going to come down again very soon. So the market's looking bearish right now. Overall, it's just continuing to just downtrend over and over again. From a more like larger perspective, you can see this downtrend that's being respected on the SPY. It looks like we're going to continue to come down. That's my honest opinion. And it does look like, the market has more pain ahead of us. Once again, guys, like I mentioned in all my videos, do not panic. Do not worry about this downside because the long term future for the American markets is still very bright, in my honest opinion. Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, these companies are going to do well. They just need time. We need to get past this market cycle. Recessions are normal. Downside is completely normal. Give it the time it needs. This is a very good buying opportunity. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Tesla to the moon because the long term future is still very, very bright. No matter what people try to say, I'm still very bullish long term. And peace out.